We will. Okay. We still got a couple of Shannon's living there yet, is she? She's still outside, I guess.
Shannon Gibson?
Yeah.
She's there.
What is she?
Yeah, we got them all. She's dipped down.
Oh, she's behind the
Yeah, she's
screen.
behind.
I didn't
I didn't see her
her.
head.
I thought she was still taking names for public comment. Everyone ready? Well, good evening. Welcome to our combination work session and regular meeting for July. Glad you could be with us. This is the largest crowd we've had in quite some time here, so it's good to see each one of you. We'd like to begin each meeting with a moment of silence, and we invite you to join us if you care to. Thank you. And if you would join me, I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Attention, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next is approval of the agenda for tonight, July 20th, 2020. Anyone have any comments? Or then without objection, we will approve the agenda for tonight. The agenda is approved. Next is public comment. I do believe we have some folks signed up to speak. I would ask you to limit your comments to 5 minutes. And Ms. Gibson, who is our first speaker?
We have Claudia Johnson.
Ms. Johnson? She may be next door.
The next is John Waycaster.
You here?
Patty Grant.
Okay.
I assume this is where I should go?
Yes.
Okay. I'm more comfortable walking across and talking, as you know. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Patty Grant, and I teach second grade at James and Brown Elementary. And there's several of us here this evening from there. Here in order to show support for our school district, each of our schools. And I want to say that I am, with the exception of about 15 years, my entire educational experience has been with the school district of Oconee County. It began across the street at age 6 at Pine Street Elementary, on through Walhalla Junior High School at that time, and then senior high. So that was the beginning of my experience with Oconee County. Then I, of course, went away, got my degree, and moved on and taught again, and taught somewhere else for a while, but then landed back here. So in my 30 plus years of teaching, 25 of those have been in the school district of Oconee County. And I say that because I want you to know that I speak from the heart, and I speak with passion about how much I value our community and our school district. Because I know that when decisions are made, even though I may not agree, I do believe you do try to make the best decision that suits the greater good. Again, I may not always agree, but I don't often feel that I have been slighted. So in this 30 plus years, I often get the question, are you still teaching? Yes. Are you planning on retiring anytime soon? No, I still love it. I enjoy being with my students. I love seeing them learn and grow and become adults and go on and do great things for themselves in our community. And there's still time to learn something more, to do something new, to have new experiences. But never did I think one of those experiences would be a pandemic. or speaking at the board meeting too, as far as that goes. So with this pandemic, we've all had to revise our thinking and make decisions we never thought we would have to make. And so the biggest decision I feel that we need to make now is starting smart and staying safe. And with the proposals that are coming forward with new calendar suggestions and revisions that Dr. Thorsland and his team have come together and gone back to the drawing board for us, I want you to take a strong look at those and really take that seriously, because I believe that hopefully with a little more time for us as educators to get better prepared, for the custodial staff to get better prepared, administration to get better prepared, if we have that extra time. And then that can also hopefully ease the tension and stress that some teachers have about going back into the classroom. Because of my time as an elementary kid, middle school kid, and high school kid, I love school and I wanted to be there. As an educator, I want to be in the classroom. But I want us to start smart and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. It's good to see you again, too. You make me feel old, though, when you talk about how long you've been here, and I've known you since you were
Well,
that
see,
time.
then I'm the old one here, but then I look up there and I see some of you that are older than me. So I feel young right now.
You were doing so well.
You'll come back every month just to feel young. Well, thank you for your comments.
Oh, is that what it was? Okay.
No, not about you, buddy.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
When you say a little bit more time, how much time are you thinking if you had in mind?
So, well, the calendars that were presented for us, the 24th or September the 8th, neither one's going to make everyone happy. So again, it's just, someone's going to be disappointed and think we need to start August the 10th or whatnot. But I just plead that we need to start a little bit later to kind of get our thoughts together.
So you're not asking for January?
No, because that may end up coming, because we don't know what's going to happen. Our numbers may not decline as it is, but at least we have an opportunity to start seeing those numbers declining. I personally, if the numbers were declining steadily, I would feel okay about starting on August the 10th, but we were down a couple of days and then we're back up, down and up, and so it's just very disheartening and discouraging.
Yeah. And I've told everybody, Patty, the best plans we make, we cannot make long-term plans in this situation. They may change, whatever we pass, may change tomorrow, before school, or after
Correct.
school starts. We don't know.
Yes.
It's just depending on the situation.
Exactly.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Okay, who's next?
I believe Ms. Johnson is here.
Okay,
Hello, how are you all?
just fine. How are you?
Just gonna leave my stuff right there.
All righty.
God bless y'all for letting me be on the agenda today. Hi. I have a copy of my concerns I'd like to give to you all. Okay. How's everybody?
Just fine.
Good. Superintendent and all the board members, I'm happy to be here today. My name is Claudia Johnson, and I'm a parent of 2 kids in the Oconee County school system. And I'm here to express concerns and questions about the upcoming school year as it relates to my children and other children in our community. I have shared with other concerned parents and community members regarding the pandemic and how it will affect our children moving forward. We are very concerned. We believe a form of parents' meeting should have been conducted prior to having to make an important decision such as we had to make recently. To my knowledge, right now, I didn't know if you all had a meeting such as this in place. Informative sessions about directions for the COVID would be a great thing could have happened for all of us. Because we do have concerns. And before we made the decision whether we wanted to do in-house, face-to-face or virtual, if we just could have some type of parent meeting so we all could, or either a parent session where we all could just talk about what our thoughts are. But I understand tonight, y'all are planning, the school board is planning on voting on this with the district and the upcoming year. So I just wanted to express some concern still. Our first question is concerning home well checks. It is our understanding that parents have to verify that their students are not exhibiting any symptoms such as fever, chills, cough, etc. But how will you ensure that each family or parent will adhere to your request? Do we have contingency plans? Will we still be checking at the school level, temperatures and things like that? What's the plan? That's what we are interested in. How do we ensure healthy environment and safety? The survey did not explain adequate measures that we were taking. There are so many circumstances that hinder adherence for this request, or in this requirement. Parents may not have the equipment, know-how, time, or even the concern to follow through with the request. I want to know, will our kids be safe? My second question, or my second concern, is the call to the schools. You strongly advise parents notify the school immediately if the student exhibits any symptoms. Is there a fail-safe for that? Again, everyone doesn't share the same urgency of the pandemic as everyone else. Sorry. Again, everyone just wants to share their concerns. However, with calling the schools, is there going to be a hotline or something for parents to call in that indicates this dedicated for this purpose? In the past, we had challenges contacting schools, just getting people to answer. A lot of times you get voicemail, you get call back, leave a message. Things will be much more complicated for this particular school year. So we were just wondering if you all are going to have something in place for that, so we can take care of our children and this will be addressed. My third concern, if teachers and students get sick during class or later find that they have the virus and now the children or the teacher is exposed, what happens? What will you have in place for this situation? What is your plan? Face-to-face schools versus virtual schools. If things get worse at the time school opens, and I had decided that earlier that I was doing face-to-face and actually because my kids really want to go to school. They want to go back to school. I don't want to stand in their way. But I'm a parent. So we're just wondering, can I change my mind right before school opens and say, look, things are getting rough out in the country and in the state of Oconee and Oconee County, then everything is rising percentage-wise. can I say, well, look, I want to try my kids at the virtual level before school starts? Will I have that opportunity to make that change? Or if we see in November that everything is still going up, the virus is just raging, will I be able to say, oh, wait, I don't want to send my kids to school anymore, I want to go virtually? Will I be able to make that change? My understanding, that's my understanding, I may be wrong, so if I'm wrong, you please can let me know, but I understand we have to wait 9 weeks once school starts. And once we do that, we have to request an appeal after 9 weeks. And then it will be your decision whether you accept my change to go to virtual or not. I don't think that's acceptable, because in this season we need to be flexible to meet the needs of the students, to make sure we have minimized health and safety problems. So that's a concern. Number 5, my
Let
fifth...
me interrupt you, please.
Yes, sir. Yes,
We
sir.
limit our public comment period to 5 minutes. So
Okay.
if you could complete it in the
Rush
next
it on
30
up.
seconds, I'll give you another 30 seconds.
So give me another 30 seconds.
All right.
Well, we're dealing with school. My son is in elementary school. He's going to 4th grade, thank God. I didn't know if you all had anything in place for pre-K to 5, because kids, they're wearing masks and all that. Kids are hyper, and they love their friends, and they like to hug their friends and all of that. So we're just wondering, do we have something in place for hand sanitizing and social distancing for those young babies? They don't understand yet. So that is the 5th concern. My last comment say, I'm going to just cut this short, because we have many concerns. So I have I've talked to several teachers who are a part of the school district here as well. And we share some of the same concerns and more. Many of them want to be with their students. Many of them understand the needs for students to have be in an academic environment. Many of them understand totally that these parents got to go to work. However, with the numbers rising in our area, with the places still being shut down across the country, not to mention the status of South Carolina alone, is now the safe time to say, let's try this, let's see what's going to happen? I have to ask if that's is that the action that you all may want to take. It's maybe something to think about, because it sounds a lot like that to a lot of people. And let's just try it and see. But we need to have the safety of our children. It is so important. They're our future. And I know you care. I know you love these kids too. So we just want to make sure we have a safe environment for our babies and our teachers that teach them. I want to thank you for your time, for letting me have the floor, and you all have a blessed night.
Any comments or questions from the board or administration? Okay. I think a lot of your questions will be answered when we get to
In
that
just a few
item on the agenda.
Okay.
Ms. Johnson. I think.
Okay, that sounds great. Thing is, just making sure.
Well, thank you for being here.
Thank you, and have a blessed one.
Who's next?
Ernestine Williams.
believe we have seen that lady before.
Yes, it's really nice to see you all tonight, and just a few years ago, I was on the other side of the table, so, but I just want to keep it within the 5 minutes, but I just wanted to briefly discuss 5 topics, and I emailed that to you, Mr. Lee and Dr. Thorson. I apologize for my back being towards you, but along with 2 other documents that were presented to me with concerns from teachers and parents and people in the community about the school reopening plan. And I want to say thank you to Dr. Thorson, because he was so busy answering the phone and checking emails. I think he and Mr. Hanby were. So I understand and I appreciate all that you've been doing to help our students, teachers, and the community during this difficult and challenging time. But I just wanted to kind of reiterate the 5 points that were sent to me that were concerns. One was the reopening plan with the timing, as Ms. Johnson just said. Why did parents have to choose an option prior to this board meeting, or at just such a critical time when it was vacation time, schools were closed, I think the district office may have been closed, and then when they called parents, there was no one, when they called the schools, no one returned their calls. So the other concern under the reopening plan was who served on the district task force committee. I have pulled the document from the State Department that Molly Spearman put out with the Accelerated Ed committee, and on page 5 it states that, let's see, there should have been a committee, a local task force and two-way communication, a local team or task force that should be established with diverse communication, community representation that creates a constructive feedback loop. So who was on the committee, how was diversity represented to make sure that there was a voice from the different communities, the different levels of teaching, from elementary, special ed, high school, middle school, and also the Hispanic population, African American community, and just with everybody, so that there would not have been concerns about what was happening and being flooded with a lot of calls. The other concern was the survey results, what happened. There were 4,615 parents surveyed. What percentage of that was that represents Oconee County school parents? Teacher survey as well, how many was a total representation of the teachers that were surveyed, and also was there an employee survey, because it is, as Ms. Johnson said and others have said, it's a scary time. So we have teachers, but we also have other staff. You know, we have the people who work in the front office, we have the custodians, we have the aides that work in the school, so everybody. So was there a survey to get feedback from them? And again, I won't repeat, but Ms. Johnson talked about the wellness check. So what would happen if parents, and I know from being an elementary principal, sometimes parents send their kids to school sick. So teachers are worried what happens, you know, if they just send them to school. How are we going to address that? We talked about the start of school date, considering that when I was talking to Dr. Thorson, actually the governor came on at that point, and we stopped our conversation to hear what he was saying, and there was a recommendation of September the 8th, and I think I just heard that Anderson 5 is looking at September the 8th. Human resources, another point that was pulled from this document from the State Department was teachers are concerned about their leave days. You know, they get 11.5 days, I think, for a year. What happens if they're sick, if they have to go into a 2-week or 14-day quarantine? So how is that going to work? And from this guideline, it states that the school district should update their policies regarding the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. So is the district going to present that new policy? I know from being in human resources, that is something that we normally look at. I know Shannon Gibson would work with us with SCASBA and look at those recommendations. I did go on the website to look to see if they did that, but you have to have a password, and I don't have a password anymore. So, but that is something, and I think that will ease the fears of, and I'm trying to talk fast, that will ease the fears of teachers that are worried about that. And then there's also an employee rights information poster that should be disseminated. So just getting that information out to provide clarity and communication will help people that I've talked to. And the last thing is just communication. That is something that, being on the management team or the leadership team in the past, that's something that we always prided ourselves in doing, and trying to bring clarity and communication to the public and to our employees as well. But what is the district's contingency plan? How do you plan to adjust and share information? But also, there are families out there that don't get information. I mean, I was actually in North Carolina when a parent called me. We were helping Anna get ready for her fellowship research plan, program, but they just didn't know that these things were going on. So that's how I got involved, and I appreciate the opportunity to serve our community and having that educational background. I respect the decisions that you'll make and that they will benefit the community, the teachers, and the staff, and I look forward to hearing Dr. Thorson present. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Ernestine. Anyone else, Shannon?
That's all.
That's all. Well, thank each of you for being here, and thank you for your comments. Next is the approval of minutes for June 15th work session, regular board meeting, and the June 30th, 2020 special call board meeting. Did anyone notice any errors in those minutes, corrections?
No.
Then without objection, we will approve the minutes for June the 15th work session, regular board meeting, and June 30th special call board meeting. The minutes are approved. Okay, discussion items, June financial report. Ms. Moore.
You all have the report, it came in your packet. Just want to remind you that this report does say June 30th, but it will not be the final report for June 30th. It is what has occurred, what we've already recorded so far this month, but we'll continue to have approvals that will need to be made. And also, I think last month I mentioned that we had not received the due power payment for the appeal. We did get that in this month in the June collections, and that is reflected in this report. So, any questions from anybody?
Scroll down to where we see salaries. There's, why would salaries be all of a sudden negative? Did we not estimate correctly at the beginning, or?
Things change all year, and we have not adjusted from the beginning of the year. Which particular?
I mean, I'm just looking at anything on the right-hand side that says, is in parentheses and in the salaries, like you're looking at high school program salaries, you got 131,000, 34 for the career and technology programs. Exceptional programs, I think 345,000, but I think those are probably from contracted services that we probably had to purchase.
Those would not be in salaries.
Oh, they would not?
Not, but we add special ed folks all during the year. We add aides, and when students need extra help. That would be one of the things. I won't say that that's all of it.
I guess what I'm trying to say, and I haven't said it well yet, is that when we propose a budget for the following year, do we look at what we spent the year before in the way of salaries, or
Well, in salaries,
you with me on to the county, you know?
what I do is I take the folks that we have in our payroll system when we start working on the budget, and I take those particular people and roll them up for their experience or whatever cost of living raise we're giving, and those people are what we base the budget on. So things change during the year. I think because this report is just one way of sorting the information, I can sort it a different way, and you would not, the total overall salaries are much closer than what you'll see if you look at each line.
Right.
So if you'd like to see that, I'll give it to you.
Oh, no, I just wanted to see if, as we propose something to the board and county council next year, will reflect the newer numbers that we actually had to spend.
You will have actually, actual numbers at the end of this year, and then we'll, because we've not even started
Right.
calculating those things yet because of the COVID-19. But when we know, when we get everybody situated where they're supposed to be for this year, I'll recalculate the salaries and we'll do an updated
Thank you.
revised budget for the new year.
Okay, thank you very much.
If I could just point out one
Yeah.
thing, I know $132,000 in the negative there for high school programs looks like a lot, and $132,000 is a lot of money. But if you add up all the salaries in our 3 high schools, it's probably close to $15 million. So $132,000 of $15 million is within 1%. So while it still looks like a lot of money, a budget is a plan. And if we can get within 1%, there's just no way we're ever going to hit all those directly on the head. We're going to be in a ballpark one way or the other. So it's not necessarily a bad thing as long as the salaries in that column kind of balance out. One's maybe to the good, one's a little bit below, but in the end, as long as we're keeping our head above water, we certainly don't want to be way off on our estimates. But
Oh, no, I was more concerned with, we talk about freezing our budget,
yes,
but then we also have to make adjustments throughout the year, that are real life. And I guess my concern is providing the correct information and then let it present it that way, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I'm not doing a real good job. I'm sorry, but, okay.
We understand you, Joe.
Thank you. I'll be quiet.
Any other comments? Ms. Moore, you have anything else on the financial report, board members? Okay, meal prices for 2021.
Okay, so just wanted to update you all. Every year we have to calculate the difference between our paid prices and what we're reimbursed by the federal government for the free lunches. And this gives us an idea of what we have to do, the federal government wants that gap to lessen. And so we are required to increase our lunch prices 10 cents this year, both elementary and secondary. So there will be $2.30 for elementary and $2.50 for secondary. Breakfast prices will not change. So I'm sure you all were aware of that.
Any questions on that? Thank you, Ms. Moore. Policy JICA-R, student dress code, admin room, Mr. Hanvey.
Yes, and my two go basically hand in hand. The administrative rule is part of the student dress code, and then the student dress code becomes part of the code of conduct that we have, that we use online, that we put out in the behavior handbook for our families. And after our June meeting and with principals of all the schools and talking with them and with the leadership team, we have made a change in here. If you look down at the 6th bullet on the administrative rule, what's in red is the change. And where it's talking about any garment or accessory that displays inappropriate language or images, and it goes into those examples, and then we added, which includes the Confederate flag, is prohibited. And then, so that goes into level 2 on page 13 of the next one, because again, they go hand in hand with the code of conduct on level 2 offense. That just had to be something for most of obviously our high school kids, but driving and flying the flag in the parking lot in the back of the vehicle. The only other change is just the date notation on the end of the policy. But those are the two requests.
Any questions on either of those, the policy or the admin rule?
Yes, sir.
Okay, reopening plan, Dr. Thorson.
thank you. I want to start just by reading a note that Shannon brought through this afternoon. I was looking at the picture straight across from me here and see Mr. Brown, and many of you know Margaret Brown, who no longer lives in our community, but she's still always great to just keep up with news in our county. So I got this card this afternoon, and she just wrote and said, "This is just a note to let you know I'm praying for you and your staff as you prepare for a new school year during a difficult time." I'll start by saying I've gotten more letters like this, and Ms. Brown is just a jewel, but there are more people who have told me or sent me notes like this than the other. Now, I've gotten my share of other, and I might say it's not more if I was a social media person. I'm not on social media, and I'm sure there's other stuff out there. But we do have a lot of people who are concerned and want what's best for our community, and I think that's what we all in this room want as well. So I'm thankful for encouragement in a tough time, because it is a tough time. And I will try to just give a brief overview, and then I'll be happy to answer questions. Of course, this started March 14th when the governor shut schools down in South Carolina. We finished the year out of our buildings, and the thing that was probably most difficult when I just look as a superintendent in the situation we were in is that I don't have a number, so I can't give you a specific number of students, but I would dare say as many as 25% of our students are either severely limited or just really can't do much of anything when we're operating from a complete virtual environment due to, it could be, just family situation at home, lack of support that younger students need. It could be lack of internet access, different things like that. But it's just hard because we've got so many students who, when we went from face-to-face to virtual, they lost out on a lot. Of course, the governor did shut us down. He shut down Kershaw County schools, and I think the very next day he shut down everybody, the whole state. I went into the summer expecting there to be state leadership to open us back up. I just thought, governor shut us down, governor's going to open us back up. So I was kind of waiting, and I think most superintendents would just kind of assume that. We learned as the summer progressed that it appeared that it was going to be a local school board decision, which I'm not knocking, y'all. I'm a local control person. I like that. However, it was probably mid-June when we started realizing that, so time was already of the essence. It was difficult. The Accelerate Ed document came out. Of course, Ms. Spearman organized that committee. They met several times and published a document that had many different ideas, recommendations. When she was presenting that to superintendents just before the final document was published, she reiterated that this is just guidance. This is for you and your school boards to use to guide your reopening, but you don't have to do anything in this plan. It's just recommendations from the Accelerate Ed Committee. Not to knock any of the recommendations, that's what she told superintendents. So, we had not done some of the things in that document, one of the things was we hadn't formalized a committee at that point, a reopening committee. We decided to. We were mid-June at that point and needed to do that quickly. So we did. I pulled up that list of people, and I'm happy to share that with anyone. I did email it to several folks. The majority of the people on the reentry committee were school district employees. And I don't apologize for that because it was necessary to have many school district employees on that committee. So I've used the example, 2 examples before. We need somebody with the big picture of school district transportation on that committee. Because we realized transportation, getting kids to and from school on the school bus was a big deal. So Mr. Wright almost had to be on that committee. The same thing for Marge Bright, our Director of Student Services. She had to be on that committee because she's the one person in our district who has the big picture view of special ed, and she has expertise that I might argue nobody else in our county has. So we needed certain people at the district level who oversaw different departments to serve on that committee. Of course, it included school board members, 3 of you served on that committee in an official capacity. I think maybe more than that, observed the meetings. It did call for parents, and I had people ask to be on that committee, and maybe we could have done it differently and just left it open and let anybody chime in, but at the same time, if the committee's 50 people, you do lose some of the efficiency the larger the committee gets. Ms. Popham, who is a parent at Blue Ridge Elementary, and she also has a child going into Seneca Middle this year, was one of our parents. Richard Blackwell, who is a parent of a Kiwi Elementary School student, was also on the committee. We had 2 teachers, Lynette Fargo, who's a teacher at Westminster Elementary, looking at the elementary side of things. I tried to balance the areas of the county, not having everybody from Seneca or not having everybody, one place or the other. The other teacher on our committee was Chris White, who's a science teacher at Seneca High School. He also wears the hat of a coach, so I thought it was good to have him on the committee from that perspective. And then we chose 3 principals. We did that, 1 from each level, and then each one also represented a different attendance area. So Dr. Blackwell from West Oak High was our high school principal, West Oak representative. Scott Dixon, Walhalla and middle school. And then we had Stephanie Hammond, who joined us from the elementary level and the Seneca area. April Howe, who is not a school district employee, but she is the general manager for Sodexo, because again, food service was a pretty important part of what's going on. I think that Al Leroy, Human Resources, and then our Mr. Hamby, Ms. Moore, Ms. Simmons,
Nursing.
Josh Shepard, our technology person.
Nursing.
Yes, Sherry McLaughlin, that's a very important part. Sherry McLaughlin, our lead nurse in the school district, was on there, of course, and she is in constant communication with DHEC as well as the medical professionals in the county. So that was already, I don't have the county right here, but that's already getting close to 20 people, and so that was our committee. We did meet. We talked about the different options. So the Accelerated Ed Committee more or less listed 3 options: 100% virtual, some type of hybrid model, and then face-to-face. I mean, those are really the 3 flavors. Now, the hybrid model can take all kinds of different forms and looks, but you're either all virtual, some type of hybrid, which in general it means a portion of students come certain times and the other portions come other times. And then there's also the 5-day-a-week face-to-face option, which is kind of back to normal, what we're all wishing for right now if the virus would let us get there. The Accelerated Ed document, I do think it's worth explaining this, and I'm sorry this is taking a little while. The Accelerated Ed document did reference high, medium, and low spread through the state. The problem was, when the Accelerated Ed document mentioned that, no such designations existed in South Carolina, or according to the DHEC, Dr. Traxler, who was talking to the superintendents, it existed nowhere in the country. No health organization, state health organization, had come up with a way to identify a county or school district as high, medium, or low spread. So Ms. Spearman went to DHEC and said, I need help. I need a way to categorize counties in this way. They came up with a way, but even Dr. Traxler said people can do it other ways. I mean, this is just one way to prioritize it. They look at 3 things. There's a document that you can get to now. It's on DHEC's website. I'll be happy to send a link to it. They published 3 unless they published another one today. So there are 3 versions of this out. They're publishing them weekly now. but it categorizes the total number of cases as high, medium, low. The middle category is whether the number of cases in your county is increasing, it's stable, or it's decreasing. And the third category they assess is the percent positive tests. And at the time that they established these three categories, they used percent positive as 5% being the threshold for being high. Well, almost every county in the state has exceeded that for the last couple of weeks. The situation with the virus, when those categories were being established, is a lot different than the situation we're in today. So I don't know that the categories would have the same thresholds if DHEC was asked to do it again today. Maybe, maybe not. I'm not a medical expert. But those three different categories are then averaged. So if you have 2 highs and 1 medium, your district should be high overall. If you have 2 mediums and 1 high, your district should be medium overall. So you average those three, and then that's that map that DHEC is providing. The last version of that came out last week, Mr. Handy, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there was 1 county in our state that was medium. Every other county in the state was high. That's what it looked like at that time. So districts were doing individual plans just locally. Ms. Simmons and Mr. Hamby and I have met. This morning I went by myself, but previous they met twice with the regional superintendent. So we've been meeting with the superintendents in Greenville, Pickens, Anderson, even Greenwood. We've had 3 meetings just to talk about this. How are you doing it? What are you doing? Sharing ideas. And we've had that committee here that met a couple of times. And then, of course, that's really all we've been talking about all summer. So, I mean, we've not to say that we have all the answers or the perfect plan, but it's not because of a lack of discussion, a lack of seeking out information and trying to make the best decision for our district. We did land on giving the option of face-to-face instruction 5 days a week and a virtual option. We chose not to do the hybrid. I can just kind of give you my thoughts behind that. And hybrid, I'm not knocking it, but it would mean that a district could divide its student body in half. And in Greenville County's case, they actually divided it in fourths. And they have 2 different flavors of hybrid. One where students would come 1 day a week, a quarter of students would come 1 day a week, with 1 day a week being virtual for everyone. And then if it gets a little better, they would come take 2 of their groups 2 days a week. So they go to 50% every day, and then back to full face-to-face. So they're looking at it that way. And that is the advantage, the big advantage that a hybrid model gives you is that it allows social distancing in your classrooms. So if we have a class of 22, and we did a hybrid model where a group of 11 came Monday and Wednesday, another group of 11 came Tuesday and Thursday, and Friday was a virtual day, that would allow us to have 11 students in the classroom, so we could put 6 feet between the desks and socially distance. And I guess the argument there is 2 days of face-to-face instruction is better than, better than none, and I would certainly agree with that. One of the problems with that, and I've been accused of just looking at school districts as babysitting. I don't think that's the way I look at schools, but one of the problems with that is it still does keep certain families kind of in a lurch when you say, oh, your kid can come Monday and Wednesday, but Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, you need to find something else to do with your children. And I'm certainly, schools are way, way more than babysitting. I mean, the purpose of schools is education. But we do have to think about parents. Parents like to know kind of what's going on, what the schedule is. So we chose not to put hybrid as an option in Oconee County. And I don't want to, sugarcoat it. I mean, we just decided not to. We decided we would give families a 5-day option or give families a virtual option. And a couple of folks in the comments cited the urgency in asking families to respond quickly. I think we asked them to respond in 6 days from the time we released it, maybe 7 days. But anyway, it was a quick turnaround for sure. We put the information out, we asked them to read it and commit one way or the other. And while I wish we could be ready at the drop of a hat, it takes a lot of planning to get prepared to teach students. So at the high school level, I was a high school principal, so I'm most familiar with that. We would start the registration process, and our high schools do now, started in February. Students do course requests, the guidance office tallies those and figures out, okay, I got 110 course requests for geometry. That means I need 5 sections of geometry, and they have to assign those to teachers. And then we put it in the computer and run a master schedule and put students in that. Well, we have to redo that. Not starting in February, starting now. We have to redo that and have it ready for students to be in our building. And we can't do that in a day. So I know it was a tight timeline. I know we were asking a lot of parents to commit. But otherwise, we would not have been anywhere close to ready. We're having to look now and say, all right, we've got this number of students that are asking for virtual education. Well, we've got to decide which teachers are teaching virtual, which ones are doing face-to-face, how many students in each class. We're completely redoing our schedule. And at the time when we set that timeline of Tuesday having your selections in, we had about 3 weeks from that time until teachers walked in our door to be ready. A process that normally could take 3-4 months. We were compressing it already. So we did have a tight timeline, and we knew that, but we didn't think there was an alternative for us to be ready for students to walk in the door. So that was probably one of the more common concerns we had from parents. And we tried to explain that as best we could when people would email us, but that's why we had to have that timeline. There's just a lot of planning that goes on in a school to be ready for students to enter that first day. The next concern I think we heard the most was committing to a full year instead of being able to change their minds. Some people asked for being able to change their mind whenever they wanted to. Others just wanted 9 weeks or a semester, whereas we had asked for an entire year. And probably at the high school level, we could change at the semester point a little bit more easily, I guess you'd say, than at the elementary level. And we can change at the elementary level, and that's something I think y'all are going to consider tonight. Ms. Simmons, being an elementary principal, I asked her to just explain a little bit about the challenges of allowing changes to which option you select. So if we had, right now we're about 75-25. 75% of our students have selected face-to-face instruction, about 25% have selected SDOC at home, our virtual. And if we have a significant number change one way or the other, Ms. Simmons can explain how that's a challenge for elementary school, maybe better than I can.
One topic that we discussed a lot was that if a elementary student comes back in at the semester, they will be starting over with a different teacher. And that, I have an elementary early childhood child of my own, and that's hard. I mean, you're already starting a school year, getting to know a teacher as a student, the parents getting to know the teacher and what their routines, procedures, things like that. So one of the big factors was just trying to really keep that child at the forefront of our minds and giving them that most consistent learning environment for the entire year, and then having the 9-week appeal process if there was an issue that just wasn't working out. But we really were just trying to keep that student in our minds and just trying that transitioning back and forth could be traumatic for some of our students that really need that relationship building with their teacher, and that's their number one person in their lives when they come to the school or meeting with them virtually. So that was one of the concerns. And at the middle school level, you could say the same thing. If you're taking a year-long course, you come back in at semester to take your math course, and you're starting with another teacher. And we do have our standards-based timelines that our teachers are doing really well with, and thank goodness we had those when we had the closure, because it allowed our department to help and support them as much as we possibly could. But at the same time, you know, that relationship that you're building with a teacher from the very start of the year can be extremely successful for a student. And interrupting that at any point in time can be a challenge. It's not something that we're not willing to discuss or hear thoughts on, but we really were trying to keep the student at the forefront of our mind when we made that decision.
And one of the guiding principles, the Accelerated Ed document from the state, it talks very clearly about districts not expecting teachers to teach a class face-to-face during the school day and then have a virtual requirement on top of that. Our teachers work extremely hard in one environment, but to expect a teacher to teach a class full of students from 8 to 2:30 in the elementary schools or 8:30 to 3:30 in the middle schools, and then expect them to also keep up with students online was not an option. So we're going to have teachers that do one or the other, and I want to explain one caveat to that in just a second, but one or the other. So if a student was in a virtual environment, doing virtual school, SDOC at home, let's say we had 3 first grade classes across our district in the SDOC at home, and at some point in the year, virus got better and half of those students decided, oh, I'm going to go back to face-to-face. Well, that means that those 3 classes now can't be 3 classes anymore, because we can't teach. If we had 28 students in each of those virtual classes, we can't teach 3 classes of 14 virtual and let all those other students go back and make the classes that are face-to-face larger and make spacing tighter and make the accommodations we've made in our schools different. We'd have to close some of those sections, which means changing teachers wouldn't just be the families who are asking for the change. Some of the families who didn't ask for the change are going to have to get a new teacher as well, because we're going to have to move our teacher resources where the student desire is. So it's, again, I recognize making a decision for a full year is tough. And I'm not saying it's an easy choice, but there was thought behind it. There are 2 sides to it. So it's not just that we're trying to be unreasonable to parents and make them choose for a whole year. It's that we're trying to protect that, at the elementary school in particular, that teacher-student relationship and that kind of thing. I still think that's maybe a place we can negotiate, but it is what it is. The one exception I mentioned, middle school and high school, those teachers could have to teach face-to-face and virtual. In our middle school and high school, just in general, they teach 3 90-minute periods a day with 1 90-minute planning period a day. So it's very possible, in speaking to the middle school and high school teachers, and Chris White in our committee meetings verified that he saw no problem, and he didn't think any of his peers would have a problem with this. You could teach 2 face-to-face math classes and have a 3rd virtual math class, and that would still be within the realm of a normal teaching assignment, because you have 3 separate classes. So it's possible at the middle school or high school level that a teacher could teach some of both, but they still wouldn't be teaching more than the typical 3 90-minute classes. It's just they may be in the 2 different options. So that's where we are right now. Just a couple of other comments I'll mention to answer some of the questions from public comment. The wellness checks we're asking families and staff members to do at home. Again, an area where there's give and take. We do realize that we would probably get more consistency if we did those every day at school, rather than having parents do those at home. However, deploying that was something that was going to be extremely hard to do. I mean, we can do the temperature checks. We've got the thermometers that you can aim at somebody's forehead and click, okay, you're good. We don't have enough to give every bus driver one, and to do that effectively, bus drivers would have to do it, because once they've gotten on the bus and been delivered to school, damage done if you're sick. I'm not ready to ask our bus drivers to do that. Just to be perfectly honest, they're not medical professionals. They don't have time to stop, ask that series of questions to every kid getting on their bus, check their temperature. Our bus routes would last 3 hours if they had to do that every morning. And then just having the regular school staff do that as well every morning, that would make, we thought the benefits of that did not weigh as much as the negative aspects of doing the health checks at school, because the last report I heard was that as many as 50% of young people that have COVID-19 exhibit no symptoms whatsoever. So they're going to pass the health check anytime you ask them, point the thermometer at their head, or ask them if they're coughing and that kind of thing. So that's why we chose not to do that. We did choose many other safety precautions. We're going to require masks 3 through 12, pretty much all day. What we're saying is masks in common areas, all students. So when you're in the hall, when you're coming into school in the morning, leaving in the afternoon, we're going to ask that you wear masks, at least for the time being, until things subside. We are making an exception in the classroom for second grade and below, quite simply because we don't think that age group can keep a mask on all day. And the American Academy of Pediatrics, their school reopening advice doesn't call for it with those ages. And that's a reputable medical organization. The only exception to mask use will be designed mask breaks. We're going to ask our teachers, if you notice that your class is getting antsy and they can't pay attention and they're pulling at their masks and you just sense it's time to give them a break, we're going to ask principals to have some type of routine in place for teachers to be able to walk their students outside, maybe walk them to the cafeteria, somewhere where they can take their mask down for a few minutes, maybe walk around, do things like that, where they can have mask breaks. The one other exception would be if, because of the number of students in digital learning, virtual learning, we have classrooms that are small enough to where we can socially distance. So if Ms. Grant's classroom had 12 students in it one day, and she could arrange the desks so that there was at least 6 feet. She's second grade. She's not a good example because she won't have to wear her room. A third grade teacher could space the desks out so that there was at least 6 feet between every desk. Then we would allow teachers to relax the national requirement there because we're able to socially distance. But in a class with 18 students, it's going to be highly unlikely that we'll get the space we need. So they would wear masks, grades 3 through 12 in that environment. So that's kind of where we are on that. Of course, we're ordering all kinds of supplies. Mr. Hamby's been working with his team to buy the hand sanitizers, the additional cleaning supplies, and things like that. We are going to have to ask for help in cleaning. Our custodial staff cannot do it by themselves. So we're all going to have to pitch in and clean where we might not have cleaned in the past. We're going to have to ask students to take a more active role in that. Elementary school lunches will be in their classrooms. We're going to keep their cohorts together, not allow them to mix very much, so that if an outbreak occurred in one of our schools, but it was contained to one classroom, we may close a classroom without closing the whole school. Do the 2-week quarantine for one class. Or if it was bad in a school, we might close a school without closing the other schools. And we're going to have to be nimble and try to ask our teachers to be able to go from a face-to-face to a virtual environment quickly and without much of a problem. So we're working on all those things. And it's a big ask. A couple more points that were brought up. The survey. 4,600 and some odd responses from parents. As far as the exact percentage of families, I can't answer that because many of those 4,615 responses would have more than one child. I responded to the survey as a parent. I've got 2 children, so that's, two kids that were represented when I answered that survey. So I would dare say it's better than 50% of our students represented in that 4,615 parent responses. And if you look at survey response rates, 50% is good. Some people have questioned why we didn't do it paper and pencil. We did it digitally. Paper and pencil surveys, the last time we did it, it was a major undertaking, just effort to try to keep people from being able to print the survey themselves. I mean, we had it to where it was identified, each student got one and only one, and you had to reply. It was a major undertaking just as far as time to get them sent to each home one time and one time only, that kind of thing. And our response rate was not that high, correct? It was significantly lower than 50%. And people can say not all of our families have technology to be able to answer an online survey, but I've not seen too many people without cell phones. Almost every adult you come in contact with has a cell phone. And you can do that survey from your cell phone. And we put it out on the website. We did calls. We did what we knew we could do to get that word out. So I don't think we did a bad job. I think 4,600 replies from a parent survey is a good response rate. That's what I would argue anyway. If we had done it paper and pencil and put them out in the mail, it would have been much slower than that. And so I'm not unhappy at all with the response rate we got. And I do think that no matter where someone lives or what school their child attends, I don't think there was an advantage because, again, cell phones, people have them today. I mean, it's just almost like, it's probably more than car keys. People have cell phones. I mean, it's just something that almost everybody has today. And as far as the faculty and staff response rate, I think I looked at that and we had 1,152 responses out of about 1,600 employees. That's good. That's good. That was sent to all employees, but one of the questions they were asked to answer was what is their role in the school district, so we could determine just teacher responses or administrator responses, or we could disaggregate the data and figure out what different groups of employees were saying as well. But 1,152 responses out of 1,600 employees is a good return on that as well. So I do feel like we ask people to give us feedback. Some people cited having to put their name, I think, on the staff. One might have been a problem. But I didn't really think we were asking anything that would be, it just wasn't, there'd be no reason to be mad at somebody based on what they responded on that survey. I mean, it was just asking for information. Are you comfortable going back? Are you not comfortable going back? I mean, those aren't things that we're going to say, oh, how dare you answer like that? I didn't. So I hope nobody took it that way. It was certainly not intended that way. As a matter of fact, that survey was pretty consistent. We used some other local district surveys as a model for ours too, so that there was at least some consistency with what other districts have asked as well. And the last thing I wrote down that I just want to mention, as far as personnel policies and the leave things, the changes, the federal government issued guidance to, I guess, all employers that if you have a quarantine that's mandated, that not be used, an employee should not have to use personal leave for that. And of course, anytime there's federal law or state law, no offense to you guys, but it supersedes board policy. So it doesn't really matter what our board policy says if there's a federal law that says you can't do that. rather than change our board policies for 6 months, when a vaccine's found and COVID-19 goes away, we're certainly going to abide by that, and we're going to communicate that to our faculty and staff. It's just that we haven't had all our faculty and staff back yet. We have our back-to-school nuts and bolts meeting with our administrators on Thursday. We met with our principals this afternoon. We're talking about that with them. They'll communicate that to our faculty and staff, so there will be no issue with us. We're certainly going to abide by federal, state laws when it comes to our personnel decisions. We just, again, haven't had the majority of our employees working this summer, so we'll communicate that to them as they come back, and of course we'll follow the federal guidelines. But we could update our policy. There'd be nothing wrong with doing that. It's just that 6 months, a year from now, we're going to ask you to change it back to the way it was, because this is kind of a temporary situation with very specific sickness that it addresses. So anyway, that was kind of our thought process behind that. But if you would like for us to change the policy for the time period that we're dealing with COVID, we can certainly do that. I've got no objection to it. It's just it would require probably another change in several months when
Well, under the emergency declaration we did,
it does.
it covers that, a temporary suspension of or change.
Of any policy that's conflicts with federal or state guidance. So I do think we're covered in that. And of course, we're going to give any staff member who is required to quarantine at home or actually gets the virus and they're at home for a 14-day period, we would certainly not require them to use personal leave because the federal government has said not to. So we won't. So that's kind of where we are on that. And I may have, this is something I tried to capture everything, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Before we have questions, could we go ahead and discuss, because I think they go hand in hand, the 2021 calendar?
Yes.
And then just roll all that into one question and answer, then we'll take action on both of them.
A couple of districts, even before the governor's address last week, have decided to look at postponing. I think more than anything, just to give the virus more time to see if numbers start going down, and maybe people would feel a little more comfortable with one choice or another. Time is a good thing, but then the governor kind of sped up that process with a lot of school districts last week when he said he thought it would be good for districts to consider September 8th, which is the Tuesday following Labor Day, I think. So we were originally scheduled for August 10th, and that's the calendar we have right now. In looking at September 8th, I developed a calendar with September 8th for our high schools, which is 180 days, and our elementary and middle schools is 185 days, because we do have 5 additional days approved by the legislature for grades K through 8, pre-K through 8. At a September 8th start date, elementary and middle schools would not finish until June 22nd, and that was with extremely, I've been using the term aggressive calendaring, which means not many breaks for students in the year, taking out as many of the breaks for students during the year as possible, and it still put us at the 22nd of June. So as we talk, there are pros and cons to that. I'll say when the calendar talk just started a week or so ago, I've gotten emails that have said more time would be great. I've also gotten an email, at least one, maybe more, that have said our students have been out of school since mid-March. We need to get them back as soon as possible. So there are opinions on both sides of that. I do think June 22nd is a bit late, because if things clear up and in the summer of 21 we're able to start at a normal time, early August, we're looking at then a 5 or 6 week summer for students, maybe even shorter for teachers. So that's a short summer. So I would like to finish a little bit earlier than that, so I went ahead and kind of split the difference. So September 8th and August 10th, I split the difference. Those are 4 weeks apart, so I did a calendar with 2 weeks of a delay, and that's the August 24th start date that you see there. And with that same aggressive calendaring, we can have high schools finished by June 2nd, elementary and middle by June 9th. Just, I guess, trying to maybe appease the most people. That's probably what I would recommend that we adopt, because I think the 2 weeks will help parents. I think it will help teachers feel more comfortable. It will definitely help administrators be ready for that first day of school because they have so much to do. But we're going to make whatever date you choose work. But I do think the 24th would be kind of a happy medium that would keep next summer from being so short. I want to be open book here. If you look at either of these new calendars, these are just versions that I kind of put together on a computer program that we have that helps us with school calendars. I want to point out the changes. Instead of 2 full weeks at Christmas, this is an 8-day Christmas. Instead of 3 days at Thanksgiving, it's a 2-day Thanksgiving. Instead of 5 staff development days interspersed throughout the year, it's only 3. It puts 7 teacher work days at the beginning of the calendar. So it's not just a peachy calendar that everybody's going to be happy with. There are some, whenever you take, you have to give a little bit too. So I just want to point that out up front. There's one thing not on this calendar that Ms. Simmons and I have been talking about. As an e-learning district this year, which means that we have the option of any inclement weather day, turning it into e-learning, which we'll give much more detail about to the principals and teachers coming up. We need to practice e-learning. So sometime in October, probably the 15th or 16th, we want to put an at-home day for students where we would intentionally tell them, all right, we're going to practice our e-learning. So if it snows in December or January, you know what to do. We're going to practice, and that'll benefit us as employees as well as students and their families. So probably the 15th or 16th of October, we would have a students at-home e-learning day to practice for that. And that's one of the requirements. We don't have to do it at home. Most districts have that have done e-learning. So that's the one exception to that. I'll be happy to answer questions about that as well.
Just one quick question on the calendar. Assuming we delay the start date, would the administration be open to giving parents that have made a choice so far between virtual and face-to-face an opportunity for several days to change that choice should the start date affect their decision?
We would, and we talked to principals about that today, and we would love to still try to do it fairly tight, but we'd like to open up the rest of this week if any family wants to call in and make a change. Our schools will be open through Thursday at 4:30 this week, and we'd love to open that up. And I know that's a short timeline.
No, I think you're going to have a lot of
deal for families, but it's certainly, all the schools are back open now, and there are people there staffing the phones and things like that, so certainly we would be open to let parents call their actual school instead of just responding to a survey. They may want to discuss things with their principal before they make that decision or something like that, but we'd be happy to entertain that as well.
Could you extend it to maybe next Tuesday, just to give...
All right, questions, comments from the board?
Yes.
Go ahead, Joe.
Talking about the virtual classroom, if memory serves me correctly, we talked about the classroom teacher that's going to do virtual is going to actually be in the classroom in the school, correct? An empty classroom, but do it virtually from there, not from home.
Some space in the school. We have wrestled with that, just to be honest, but right now the plan is for all of our teachers to work from a school building. It may be a classroom, it could be an office space in the school somewhere, but yes, right now the plan is for all teachers, regardless of whether they're teaching face-to-face or virtually, to be in the school. We think, for one thing, just part of the team that you have, if you're teaching third grade virtually, it still benefits you to be able to communicate with the other third grade teachers.
With either one of your, third grade teachers on either side of you, right?
And how their students are doing, how your students are doing, so we feel like that's an important part to teaching that we don't want to give up, so.
Right, because the room is going to be empty anyway, because the kids are sitting at home, theoretically, are they not?
It's possible the room could be empty, but it's also possible, depending on school to school, we may be able to, for example, if we had 80 third graders, that's probably 4 classes of 20. But if 20 third graders stay home, and now we have 60 who are in face-to-face, we may be in a situation where we can have 4 classes of 15 as opposed to 3 20s face-to-face. That's what we like to do. So some of our intervention teachers, different positions may help us fill that gap so we can reduce the number of students in classes in the face-to-face.
So there's a possibility that other content people will be teaching, cross-teaching something else then?
I would say anything's a possibility right now.
Good.
As we go into planning. Now, certainly the teachers would be consulted, the principal's going to talk to them about, pros and cons and things like that. But yes, anything's possible right now, just as far as what we would have. Now, we're not doing the scenario where we ask a teacher to teach all day face-to-face and then go home.
No, we're talking one or the other.
But as far as what you're teaching,
right.
If someone's been a math intervention teacher, could they be asked to be a third grade teacher? Yes, that's possible.
Okay, what about...
Go ahead.
Okay. What about could a third grade teacher at, say, James M. Brown be able to, will they just teach their virtual students, or could they possibly teach from Wahala L, from Kiwi, and so on?
Yeah. Right now, this could change.
Right.
We do think it's possible in Power School to allow grouping of students outside the local school. So we've been picking on Ms. Grant tonight.
We'll keep picking on her.
If she was a virtual second grade teacher, James M. Brown, so in the Walhalla area, and we at Tomasi Salem Elementary, there were only 3 second graders that chose virtual education. Right. And that's not real, that's just me making something up. But let's just say there were only 3. Well, Tomasi Salem can't allocate a second grade teacher to teach 3 students. So we could, Mr. Norzan could add Ms. Grant in the computer system to his teaching staff, and Ms. Grant could teach 17 James M. Brown students and 3 Tomasi Salem students virtually. Yes, she could, and we are looking at our elementary schools collaborating within their attendance area, so there'd be 4 elementary schools in Walhalla, 3 in Seneca, 3 in the West Oak area, and we would like to be able to do that in an effort to help the smaller schools, because it's very unlikely that our smaller schools would be able to allocate a full teacher at each grade level. So to offer that, we really have to think regionally like that.
Right, because we got to think outside the brick and mortar side of the house on the virtual side.
Correct. And our middle school principals and high school principals are planning the exact same way. I left them at our principals meeting this afternoon. When I left, those groups of 3 were together, and they were talking about how they can do the same thing. So, it might be that at Seneca Middle School, there's an Algebra 1 teacher, and at West Oak Middle School, there's an 7th grade English teacher, and Walhalla Middle School might have an 8th grade science teacher, and they're all teaching students in the entire county based on that, just what the need is, and that's going to help us be able to offer more classes that a school couldn't offer individually. So if we had honors 7th grade English, but there were only 8 students at each school that signed up for honors 7th grade English. Well, neither one of them can allocate a teacher for 8 students, but if we put all 8s together and have 24, now we can put a teacher in that class. So yes, that we are thinking of the virtual environment being larger than a single school.
Okay. I got another one. When it comes, if we're considering moving to a later date, The concern I have is, one, we got to have the teachers to be ready to teach the kids, whether it's virtual or face-to-face, and we got to have our schools ready. On the school side, I'll give Dr. Thorson a break. Our supplies. How are we looking at the supplies that are coming in? Because I know for a fact that, you're asking the bus drivers to clean their buses between routes, right? And we're having to clean the classrooms, and the kids are going to possibly help us with that. It's like those Lysol wipes. Do you have enough Lysol wipes? I mean, we can't find them in the.
It's like waiting in the lottery if you find
Right.
Lysol wipes.
And that's the point. I mean,
Sure.
Do you think we're going to be able to get enough to do what you want to do?
And to do what I want to as early as possible, probably not everything. Like there's the cleaners that do the fogging, the misting.
The electrostatic cleaners, yeah.
Within 5 minutes you can go, and the custodian could go after school and hit half the classes, and the next morning crew could hit the other half, and that way they would be completely clean before kids come back. We have 30 of those on order. So, yeah, a couple of weeks is a little bit closer to getting that stuff in. I'll be honest, when we talked about it as a leadership team and Dr. Thorson told us, I said, selfishly, a 2-week extension would be beneficial to my department. It will help. We've got technology on order that kept getting pushed back. The actual date is the 24th that we have now from the company. But it also gives my team in technology, my team in maintenance, my team in transportation, HR, all my teams time to look at the things and finish up and get better prepared. So we ordered some stuff in the spring. We did our CARES Act plan, and we have some money in that we're using for supplies and that. But just like everybody in the state and the country, everybody's trying to get the wipes, the paper towels. It's amazing you can't get the little squirt bottles that you would put the hand sanitizers in. We try to order those for every class. You can't get the spray bottles, the 16-ounce spray bottles to use so that we can wipe down desks and things. But we are getting enough things that we can use to have the schools safe and clean and what they need to have. It'll take a little bit more elbow grease until we get those machines in,
right.
But our folks understand that and they're willing to do that. So from a operations standpoint, the 2 weeks or whatever is beneficial.
So if we give you the 24th, you can still do what you have promised.
We can do it with the 10th.
Do you want the 10th?
I do not.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I would prefer not.
Right.
But that just gives us, 2 more weeks of cushion to get. We've got a bunch of stuff in the warehouse right now. We started ordering back in May.
Like the masks for the kids? Do we have things like that for them?
We've got masks for staff. We've got shields coming. We've got all those things. So Scott Orr has done a really good job in procurement to help us get those things. So we're working toward it, but a 2-week break could be beneficial.
Okay.
Speaking of masks, if I could just chime in, because this has been
Please.
a question a lot of people have asked, so getting it out there on the record is a good thing. People have asked about providing their own masks. That's what we want. We want families to provide a mask that their kids comfortable with, that they're used to wearing. It took me about 4 or 5 before I found one that I could kind of tolerate, and I found one that I kind of like now, so I'm okay with it. So we would prefer families and employees to find a mask that they're comfortable with and provide it themselves. We're not really picky about whether it's wrapped around the ears or around your head, or it's one of those that you just pull up from your neck. That doesn't matter to us. I think the spirit is that you're covering your nose and your mouth. Now, we certainly don't want, a piece of fishnet covering your nose and mouth that's not stopping anything, but as long as it's a piece of cloth and it's covering your nose and your mouth, and you provide it from home, we feel like kids are going to be happier about wearing something that they're comfortable with. We will have masks for students who don't have one and can't provide their own, so we will provide them if necessary, but we would love for families to provide one that they're comfortable with, or employees to provide one they're comfortable with. Somebody at church told me yesterday, you can even buy the neck gaiters now. You send a photograph of yourself in, and they'll print the mask and have the lower part of your face on it, so you pull it up and it looks like you're all there. Anyway, so we're happy for families to provide those. Mr. Hamby did just mention, same rules that would apply for T-shirts. They don't need to have, language or images on them that are not appropriate for school. But I've not seen too many masks like that. So within reason, just provide what you're comfortable with.
And another thing for our parents and folks that are going to listen or watching, whatever, is that we have had a lot of questions about masks for folks who don't feel comfortable wearing them. We will allow them to wear a face shield. Now, we're not providing those, but they can get those, and you can order them off Amazon. We've ordered a number of them for our staff, specifically, pre-K through 2 and special education. We will have some for some others that need them, but those are the groups that we designated our first order for. Our plan is to give each student that needs a mask a couple. They will be the reusable kind. They can wash them, so they have one to wear on Monday, and then they can take it home and get it washed and wear the other one on Tuesday and just keep rotating them out. So we would start with 2 and try to work our way up, depending upon how many we have to provide.
Okay. Mr. Hanvey, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Is the face shield in lieu of the mask or in addition to?
In lieu of.
In lieu of, okay.
What I've been telling parents is that the requirement is for a mask, but if a student has a medical condition that would prevent them from wearing a mask, some asthmatic students aren't comfortable in masks, we would allow a face shield in that situation. So we want the mask to be primary, but if there's some compelling reason that would prevent a student from wearing a mask, then we would allow the face shield.
You're doing that for teachers as well, the masks, because there are some teachers that need, when they're working with their children,
Yes.
the forming of the special ed, I believe it is.
We're about 600 so far.
Speech therapists,
Thank you.
kids need to see their mouth,
Mouths,
the mouth
right.
of the teacher moving. There are certain students who are hard of hearing and they read lips. So situations like that, we would put either a mask that has a little clear shield in it. My wife's a speech therapist. She has one with the little 2- and 3-year-olds she works with. But in certain situations where it's required, we would have something like that that would replace just a traditional mask that we're wearing. But those would be the exceptions rather than the rule.
We have a meeting tomorrow morning at 7:30 to look at the order, but we're also trying to see, and again, a lot of these things, you have to see what's on state contract and what you can do through procurement and follow the proper procedures in that. You don't want Ms. Moore getting on to you about that.
It could be considered emergency.
We're also looking at plexiglass. So a lot of our elementary schools use tables. So they have round tables and they sit 4 kids around, and we're looking at a plexiglass that fits crossways and would section off that table into 4 individual areas, basically for kids to work. If we're keeping it in pods, you would have to clean it, every 15 minutes, but you could keep them in there and you could have them divided, not only with any other way you can, but you'd also have that plexiglass there. We've also ordered them for the front office, and those, they have them in those buildings now. We use them with Ms. Luss doing 4K testing tomorrow. They have them in place there to do that with the kids who are coming in.
How about busing? Let's talk, I'm sorry,
That's what I was going to ask.
Go ahead, you want to ask?
About the transportation plan.
Yeah.
Well, and that's another reason why we needed the information quickly from our parents, is because, on that form, if you click face-to-face, it automatically took you to the next thing that said, do you need transportation in the morning? If so, where you picked up, and then, do you need it in the afternoon? Because some may ride the bus in the morning, and they may get a ride home in the afternoon, or they may go to daycare or whatever, or stay for the YMCA, those kind of things. So we needed to get that information. So that's another reason we need a quick turnaround, because once we have all that, and if things change and people can make adjustments through the end of this week, and that will be Friday or the first of next week, Mr. Wright and our 3 area directors will sit down and they'll start laying out those routes and looking, because, where can't go a little more than 50% capacity. If you have folks sitting in household pods in there, you can put 2 kids from a household in there because they're living in the same house. So we got to see what we need to do as far as bus routes. Are we going to have to double up on some routes because we've got a lot of kids that, on that route that have chosen face-to-face? So between Mr. Wright and our 3 area directors and Ms. Simmering across the street from the county also is very helpful. She helps us plot those on a map, and we give her, a spreadsheet with addresses and things. But yeah, that takes a lot of planning, so that's another reason we need information as quickly as possible.
Along those same lines,
Question on the
go ahead,
buses.
Yes, sir.
If you have to double the routes, is the state going to make any contribution towards paying for the use of the gasoline and the upkeep of the buses? Or is that going to fall on the district to pick that up?
The state pays for fuel.
Even if you have to double the route?
No matter how, yeah.
The cost that we would incur would be
The drivers.
the drivers if they exceed the 6 hours a day that we budget for them. So if they got into an 8-hour a day because they're running 4 routes instead of 2, then we would have to pay the drivers. But the bus.
The other issue for that, is that then it starts messing up when your kids get to school. So if you have to run 2 routes for an elementary school, and so you drop the first group off at 7:20, and they go, and then somebody's got to supervise them, and then they go ahead and start, because if you're gonna do 2 routes in the morning, you're most likely gonna do 2 routes in the afternoon. So you do a group from 7:45 to 2:15, and another group from 8:15 to 2:45, and keep them in there. So it creates a lot of logistic issues that if we don't have the information, we can't really work all those problems out.
What you say in the schedule is going to be a nightmare.
Pretty much, yes, sir.
Because these kids are going to need to know, I'm sorry, these kids are going to need to be able to determine whether they're on the first loop to school or the second loop, or maybe there is no third loop, is there?
No, should be.
And while we're getting things on the record,
Yeah, please.
consider this a plea for parents. If you can possibly drive your kid to school this year, at least to start the school year, it will help us. The fewer kids that we have to transport by bus, the more time, it literally means more instructional time if we don't have to double route in the mornings. So the more parents, grandparents, family members that can drive students to school, the better we'll be.
while we're on bus transportation, Ms. Tammy, let me ask you one question. When parents completed or will, and of course can change it in the coming week, whether they want their child to attend virtual or face-to-face, how long is that commitment for now? What is the administration, how long are they committing to that decision?
To stay in
virtual or face-to-face?
Well, we said minus an appeal is for the year. You can appeal at the end of each 9 weeks, each grade period.
I don't know that a year may be a little bit too long. I would, I don't know what, realize we can't make drastic changes, but could we do that a semester at a time?
Do whatever you want.
We can, and that's what
we're going to
Ms. Simmons
discuss.
had mentioned earlier, we were talking about, as long as parents understand that introducing that change could mean teacher changes. And that's probably more traumatic the younger the student. High school students, they get new teachers at the semester point anyway, for the most part. But that could be traumatic for a kindergarten or a first grader. And if we allow changes and we have a significant number of changes, it will mean that certain numbers of students will get new teachers. As long as people go into it understanding that.
And teachers could get new assignments.
Right.
Yes.
How low does the standard-based timeline go? What grade level?
Oh, pre-K.
Okay. So there is a possibility then that as the year goes along, the virtual classroom could change, could flex, and some of the parents would say, I like to go back into the face-to-face. Right?
They could appeal it the 9 weeks right now.
Right.
This is not it's not as big of an instructional problem as it would have been 3 years ago.
Right, because we have the standard-based timeline.
No matter what.
They're all on the same thing.
You should be within, plus or minus a couple of days, you should be in the same place in the curriculum. So it's not it's not the instructional side, it's more of the relationship side that.
With the
that
children.
we're concerned with.
But there's, come 9 weeks, come some, 9 weeks or semester, that would have to be, if we're going to do a break, it's going to have to be at that point in time, when that teacher's finished grading. I mean,
That was one of the reasons for the 9-week
Weeks.
deal too, like just making sure it's
it's got, I mean,
Right.
not 3 weeks into it,
right.
because we got to have grades. It's like a child moving from one school district to another, how much fun that's going to be for the child, and the grades and so on.
Dr. Thorsland, if the numbers continue to climb exponentially and our area becomes a hot spot, how will we determine at what point we transition to 100% virtual teaching and learning?
Yeah, that's a very good question. It's one people have asked. I don't have just a short answer
Yeah.
to say, at this point, we would do that. While we're under that classification system that DHEC developed at Ms. Spearman's request, we are classified as high right now. I also looked at the map on DHEC's website, and it just has the colors of the counties for the number of cases, and we're not dark red like Greenville or Charleston. So I guess it just kind of depends on the metric you look at. We had, I think, a daily high maybe on Saturday that was reported of 34 new cases in Oconee. And that was high, but I think the reason for that was we had a 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. testing at Blue Ridge Elementary on Tuesday, and it takes several days. So I'm assuming that those 900 people that were tested on Tuesday, their results were put in that Saturday count. Today's count was 10 again. So we've been hovering in the teens for the most part, with an occasional 20-something or 30-something, and that's about 3 weeks now. So I'm not a medical expert. I will listen to people and listen to y'all. If we need to close, if Prisma Health said we're out of hospital beds, people are getting sick, and we don't have a place to put them, that's something we've got to consider. At that point, maybe it does mean that we close down. So we're just going to gather information and make the best decision that we can.
Yeah, it's kind of like I said, Dr. Sloan, in the beginning, we can't make long-term.
It's fluid. It's fluid.
7:40 on the 20th of July, this is our plan. It could change tomorrow, next week, or at any time, depending on the situation. So, again, I don't think you can make long-term plans at this point.
And there are some states, I think, that have made statewide decisions. The governor closed us in March. He could close us again.
Close us again.
I think he's going to, based on the feedback I've gotten from him, but it could. Not that I've got any personal feedback, but just observing him, it doesn't appear like he's going to close us with us again. While I'm not a medical expert, I can listen, and with the just leadership in the district, I think we're attuned to what's going on. Maybe some people would say we're not, because we're opening now, but I don't know.
And I just have one last question. I think it's my last one. Do we have a visual of what an elementary classroom would look like?
We don't have just a specific one. Mr. Hanby might can speak to this more than me, but we have asked teachers to remove anything that's not absolutely necessary. So we're asking people to take out, carpets and lamps and things like that. So we're back to the basics. What that's going to allow us to do is have the most space possible to spread the desks out. But we have some elementary classrooms that have tables that Mr. Hanby described. We have some elementary classrooms with desks. So it just depends. Do you think I add to that?
Well, we went to Blue Ridge earlier in the summer, and we laid out a couple of classrooms just to look and see. And you can easily do 12 and spread them out, and you have your 6 feet in that. Most of our classrooms are 800 square feet, just as a norm. That's pretty much our standard, some maybe a little bit smaller. But when you start trying to get 16 to 18, it may end up being from center to center 4 feet instead of the 6 feet. The American Academy of Pediatrics that Dr. Thorson referenced earlier, they say the first 3 feet is more important than 4, 5, and 6. You know, so we got to have at least 3. We're trying to shoot for 6, obviously, but 4.5 if we can't get there. But we don't have I don't have a diagram per se, but we did go to Blue Ridge and lay out, move desks around, move the student desks in there, move the teacher desk around. It's not going to be as cozy as our elementary folks like for their rooms to be, and warm and fuzzy and inviting. But that's just the nature of it, is that we're going to spread around as much as we can and have what you really need. I think it will make a big difference if we can get those plexiglass pieces and dividers in there too.
The spacing in that American Academy of Pediatrics reopening of school document, and one thing they said very specifically in there, not being able to provide 6 feet of space between desks is not a reason in itself not to reopen your schools. I mean, again, that's from medical professionals. So they said, as long as you can get 3, with 6 being optimum, but if you can provide 3, which we feel confident we can do that there may be calls for reopening schools without getting the 6 feet. So that was very, and I would encourage anybody, if you just Google American Academy of Pediatrics, that's a public document. That's not something that's just privy to us. You can find that document and read it for yourself. But it's good information as well. And again, CDC and DHEC have different guidelines. So I'm not saying one's better, one's worse. I'm just saying there are different opinions out there from knowledgeable people.
How's our staffing for this?
Can I ask one question? Are you all going to be doing the internet buses for those kids that's doing virtual that don't have internet? Are y'all going to do that this time?
So the question is, I think the buses that were provided by the state as Wi-Fi hotspots, our experience with those during the closure in the spring was not very positive. They weren't very effective. And even when they were effective and working, which was maybe half the time, maybe, even when they were working, our bus drivers reported that while they would sit there, nobody would come use them. Now, we do have a change that will stay in place, is there's at least one parking lot in every one of our schools and campuses. Even here, you can use the front parking lot, but all of our school district facilities have at least one parking lot that's kind of a hot spot that's live for getting internet. And then we just had some gracious community partners too. The county helped us out. One's on telecom. I don't want to miss anybody, but those are just a couple that just volunteered to put hotspots up in different places. And as far as I know, those are still active.
They are, and the state also has a plan for getting hotspots to students in need. So that'll be another option. We had to do a survey to let them know how many of the state bought, like 50,000 hotspots that they're going to distribute to the different districts. So that might be an option for some of our families as well. We're still waiting on those. They obviously had a connection we didn't have because they could get their materials quicker than we could get ours. Maybe we don't order 50,000. That's why. But that is another option for our families. But we found out that it was worked out in most of the places where we were taking the buses, like Dr. Thorson said, we never had a time when all 6 of them were working at the same time. And our folks can't work on them, so they have to require somebody from the state office to come work on them. And then the bus drivers would tell us that they would park at a church or an area that they were in, and that nobody would come even get. Now, we could not, for full disclosure again, we could not go on there and read the data and see if anybody, maybe in an apartment nearby or a house nearby, was logging on. There could have been a few, but we couldn't access that data to see. But we think that the hotspots, like Dr. Thorson said, that one tone and the county provided, and then having the hotspots that the state will provide. Now, again, if you're somewhere way up in the mountains of, Mount Rest, Long Creek, or Demonstration Salem, or wherever, even a hotspot's probably not going to help you. So we know there are going to be those those situations. But they can come, and most of the things that we have will be, especially if we have to make a switch from face-to-face to virtual, will be things that somebody could go to a parking lot and download and then take it back to their house and they can work on it on their Chromebook, and then when they get back to the internet, then it uploads the information for them.
Steve, let me ask you, you mentioned, or what I heard from the committee meetings, and I just listened in on most of it. Now, this virtual education beginning this year, it will be much more structured than the
instruction.
The spring. In other words, you're going to, and I'm asking, you're going to expect students to be on that device at 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning and be there till 2:30, 3 in the afternoon, of course, with breaks and a lunch break. Is that correct? And if that's so, I don't see that a hotspot would do them a lot of good unless they want to stay out there in the parking lot all day.
Yes, it cannot be what we just did in the spring. According to the State Department, it has to be a lot more accountability. We were operating just under emergency situation at that point, but in the information that we sent out for our instructional options within the SDOC at home, which is our remote option, we put some sample schedules. It's not that those are definitely going to be the schedules, but we wanted parents to see that live instruction would be taking place.
And they will be held
and they would be on a schedule.
Same attendance standards, same
grade,
same academic standards, grading policy. Okay.
Yes, sir.
I thought that's what I understood from.
And our hope is that are showing our parents that are choosing that option that teacher support is going to be there. There was a lot of stress with parents feeling like they were doing a lot of the teaching when we were closed in the spring, and that I know the teachers would want to provide as much support as they possibly could for their students. So just trying to show our parents that visual that we'll be working with our teachers that are SDOC at home teachers on making that a good structured schedule where live teaching will be taking place.
And they'll have to have their own internet.
Yes, when they
I just want to make
completed the
certain.
registration survey, that was one of the
That was
things
one of the
they had to say. That they had not only that, but also some learner support.
All right, let's try to wrap this thing up here. Buddy, you have anything? Any other questions, comments? Jeff?
I'm through.
Dr. Thorne? Denise? Nothing? Dr. Thorne, Ms. Hanby, Ms. Simmons, anything?
I hope we've answered most of the questions anyway.
But would y'all feel comfortable with just committing to the one semester on the decision to be virtual or, okay, if we could.
I'm comfortable with that, just with the caveat of families understanding it could mean a future change.
Okay, discussion, possible action. Are you ready to vote on a 2021 school calendar? Is there a motion to, of course, we already have an approved one, so we're approving a new calendar.
And if somebody's going to do that, just because it did not get on the draft that you have, so all the information that was published does not have that October 15, 16 practice e-learning day.
Yeah.
It would be a day at home for students, but the teachers would be practicing that inclement weather procedure. So we'll add that before, if you do publish something, if you do approve something different, we'll put that day on there before we publish it tomorrow.
Okay.
How would you like for us just to vote on the start date? And you can finish the rest. You want that? I mean,
That's fine, I think that's what.
then that'll give you some time to digest the rest of it, and you can put in whatever you want. We just give you the start date. Would that be inappropriate?
Yeah. Buddy, did you start to say something when? I thought I heard you.
I'm just listening right now.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we accept the August 24th start date for the school district of Oconee County with whatever minor changes the management and leadership team needs to make.
I second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the calendar with the one minor change Dr. Thorson mentioned to begin August 24th. Any discussion or questions? All in favor? Okay, next, the reopening plan approval. I think we've heard Dr. Thorson describe it. If there's any changes that you want to make to that, I don't know that we need to include it in a motion, just to, to extend the parent choice for a week to make it one semester rather than the whole year commitment. But if you want to put that into a motion, fine, but, I think they've heard our concerns. So is there a motion on a reopening plan approval as discussed?
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the reopening plan presented by the administration to include the semester as opposed to the full year as far as being able to change from virtual to face-to-face.
I second that.
Motion and a second. Other discussion or questions? All in favor? Opposed? It's 4-1. Okay, first reading approval, the two policies we discussed in the discussion items up there, probably JICA-R, student dress code, administrative rule, and policy JICDA, code of conduct. The only change being the inclusion of the Confederate flag on the clothing, I believe, was that the only change?
And then the driving with it.
Yeah, and the driving in the vehicle, that's true. Is there a motion on approval? I think we can do both of those at one time. They're the same policy, just one is an administrative rule.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve at first reading policy JICA-R, student dress code administrative rule, and policy JICDA, code of conduct.
I second.
Motion and second to approve both the policy and the administrative rule of JICA-R, student dress code, code of conduct. Any questions? All in favor? And it is unanimous. Second reading on policy GCC, GDC, staff leave and absences. That's yours, isn't it?
Yes. This is the policy that we talked about last month. It refers to paying employees for their accumulated leaves if they leave the district. We're just making a small change, not to how we pay, but to the fact that we report the first 45 days of accumulated leave when they retire to the retirement system for service credit.
For service.
No change in how we pay them.
Okay, any questions on that? Is there a motion to approve policy GCC, GDC, staff leave and absences on second reading?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that on second reading, we approve policy GCC, GDC, staff leave and absences.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? All in favor? And it is unanimous. That concludes the open portion of our meeting. We do have an executive session for employment items, employment recommendations and changes. We will return here for any action required by executive session, but for those watching live via YouTube, we will not return to live YouTube for that very brief open session. So, but we will return to open session in this room for any action.
As a matter of fact, Mr. Lee, to keep social distancing in mind, rather than put y'all in a small conference room, we would like to hold executive session out here, so we're going to let the room clear out, let you stay here for executive session. And then if anybody wants to hang around and come back in, but it's just going to,
Okay, then without objection, we will move into executive session for employment recommendations and changes. We're in executive session. Thank y'all for being here.
You can stretch yourself well.
did a good job, thank you.
Let me talk to Patty just a minute.
Well, it's
Let me
hard.
go to these old people in here.
I'll tell you
Now,
something.
be careful.
Go all the way over to the end.
Yeah, he's the oldest.
Senior. It's good to see you.
Yeah, so it's easier for me to get up there.
I haven't seen you in a long time.
I have been on call.
Yeah, I'm just saying, but